forward here?
I think that concludes the news.
All right, I think so too. So the first movie we're going to be moving into this week of our two main films is going to be The Raid 2.
Nama saya Rama. Saya tahu siapa kamu. Abang saya bilang, saya bisa percaya Bapak. Abang lu nggak salah. Lu suka atau tidak suka dengan peristiwa hari ini, Reza dan anak buahnya akan ngincer lu. Mereka akan ngincer lu sampai ketemu. Kalau kita nggak cepat bertindak, lu bakal hilang. Keluarga lu juga. Sekarang ini kota dibagi rata. Antara tokoh kita bangun dan Koto Gumi keluar ke Jepang. Uco, anaknya bangun, sekarang ada di penjara. Ini saat yang tepat buat lu masuk dan dekatin dia. Gue mau lu gabung sama tim gue. Lu bakal dilatih ulang sampai lu punya kemampuan yang lebih baik untuk membela kepentingan yang benar. Artinya, lu harus gue tangkap.
And only Brian and myself saw this. James has yet to discover the majesty and amazingness of the Raid series. So
I want to jump in right here. Because after getting all these text messages from Brian about how stupid I am for not watching the Raid, I said, you know what?
It was one text message.
What?
It was only one.
Well, first of all, it arrived at me twice, so I don't know what you did there. But anyway, and you've talked about it. Oh yeah, you posted it on Facebook and like all of this crap.
I didn't know you were on Facebook.
Oh, okay. So anyway, I said, you know what? I still kind of have time. If I can find the Raid Redemption, maybe I could watch that Saturday night and Sunday morning run out somewhere and watch Raid 2. And the thing is, I found almost no way to watch a Raid Redemption. I tried to go on Amazon, and they wanted me to buy it for $10, and I wasn't going to do that.
Wow.
And, I mean, like, buying it, yeah, I understand I could have got it. But I was just trying to rent it somewhere. And I think that's one of the things I'm really sad about not having Blockbuster anymore. Because there's no way to just like run in somewhere and grab a copy of a film.
Redbox?
Redbox doesn't have it. I checked. And so there's, if I had been able to find a way to watch the Raid Redemption, I would have tried to catch up.
What are you talking about, James? It's on Amazon Rentals.
I told you. I went on there, and the only option it gave me was to buy it, $9.99.
Who cares? It's worth $9.99.
I told you I don't want to buy it. What part of the story you're not listening to? So anyway. So,
Okay. Well, I mean,
so I'm just saying,
at least you made an effort.
Right, right. I tried to catch up, and if I had been able to, I would have watched it, but I wasn't able to, so I'll sit back and listen to you guys.
Oh my God! You had to keep trying.
What do you want me to do in the next 15 seconds? Watch 2 movies?
I'm gonna do you a favor, James. Are you coming for WrestleMania next Sunday?
I don't know that.
I can let you borrow the Blu-ray. Wait, you don't have a Blu-ray player.
He doesn't have a
Never mind.
I have a Blu-ray player, so shut your pie-ness.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
A friend let me borrow indefinitely his PS3, and so now I have a Blu-ray player.
Okay.
In fact, I told you that, Brian. I told you I have a PS3 now.
It's more entertaining for the
You don't
podcast.
listen to anything I say.
Podcast. God.
Okay.
Okay,
With
so
that out of the way.
all I'm saying is you guys discuss, and I'll just sit back.
Okay.
So we're not talking about spoilers then, Dave?
I don't think so. I mean,
If you feel like you need to
this-
talk about spoilers, then just tell me to take my headset off, and when you wave your arms, I'll put my headset back on.
The only reason anybody would have to talk about spoilers about this movie, if you just wanted to geek out over like the fight scenes and like wanted to talk about how amazing it was that guy got his head crushed, or like this person got all their bones broke or something like that.
All right.
So-
I'll work around it.
I mean, I don't think it's spoiling anything to mention specific scenes, but I don't think there's any need to get into detail about them.
Okay.
But in any case, yeah, I'm going to lead us off here for the Raid 2, and as James already mentioned, it is, and like you couldn't tell from the title, it is a sequel to the Raid Redemption, which came out, I think, about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I guess I'll speak briefly about that movie, which it kind of hit the independent film circuit, and it kind of blew up after that. Everybody all over the internet was hailing it as the best action movie ever made.
Except James.
So, and and then trailers got released for it, and yeah, the trailers really did impress. They delivered on the trailers themselves, delivered on everything everybody was saying about it. Then the film came out, and of course it was limited release because it was from I think Sony Pictures Classic released it, which is their independent label, so it didn't get a wide release. On top of that, it was subtitled, so not very many theaters picked it up. But those who were lucky enough to go see that thing in the theater were treated to probably the best action movie in years. I want to hold off on calling it the best action movie ever made, especially after watching The Raid 2. But it's definitely, I would say it's definitely, that nobody could argue it's in the top 10 action movies of all time. There's no way anybody can argue against that. It kind of came out of nowhere and showed Hollywood how to do action right. You know, to all the Michael Bays and everything out there. It's like, you know, this is how you direct action. And it was just an amazing film to watch.
I think
especially for action junkies.
I think the only downside for the first one is that the story's a little thin. I think in some ways.
Yes.
But you know, everything else makes up for it. Plus, in part 2, it's the story is much better.
The story in part 2 is worlds better, which this time, so the first movie was basically a group of cops, and they were like kind of having to force themselves up like I forget how many story tall apartment building that was filled with criminals.
15.
And by the end of that film, I guess spoilers for the first raid, you know, at least one of the cops survives, and he gets out, and this film picks up literally about 2 hours later after that film ends, and we see the lead character, whose name was Rama, played by let me see if I get his name right, Iko Uwais, I think. I don't know. I could be butchering that name. I'm sorry. He's an Indonesian actor / martial artist, and we see his story pick up again at the beginning of this film, where he's being brought into this kind of like a small group of cops that are sick and tired of the corruption in the city, and they want to send him in to infiltrate the crime families of the city and try and get evidence to bring them down. And of course, their plan that they have for him goes completely like off the rails, and soon he finds himself out there on his own, and it's basically Rama versus like I think at least 3 crime organizations by the time this movie gets really thick into the action. And yeah, I don't want to say any more than that. Like Brian said, the story in this is really good. It has kind of a lot of mob movie influences, stuff like The Godfather and Goodfellas. You'll recognize a lot of stuff in there, because unlike the first film, this one actually takes time in between the action. One of the greatest things about that first film was that it really gave you almost no time to catch your breath. It was relentless. It was just action from I'd say from the moment they went inside the apartment complex to the end, it was nonstop. Whereas this one, they take their time leading up to the action scenes, and I think that is what ultimately kind of has swayed me into thinking this is probably the better film of the two, just because it actually gives good reason for the action. And the story, you really get behind the main character, and you want to see him like come out of this okay. And as you see this like insurmountable odds is popping up all around him, and like the stakes just keep getting higher and whatnot. It creates this tension that like when you finally get that like adrenaline release when the action scenes hit, it's amazing. And it doesn't hurt that the action scenes are probably not just the best action sequences I've ever seen in a movie, but like I said before about the first film, they're shot in a way that you can see every single punch, kick, like stab, gunshot, and it's glorious. For action movies, action movie junkies, it doesn't get any better. The Raid 2 really does up the ante from the first film with some of the scenes that they do, which, Brian, I'm pretty sure that's what you wanted to talk about.
Well, I know James already left.
Oh,
I know James left.
But I was saying, it's like what I liked was that, you know, since the playground kind of expands to an entire city, the director Gareth Evans found a way to keep a lot of the action kind of like claustrophobic, but he also found ways to open it up into bigger areas. Yeah. Like I think the first big action scene in this movie is the riot in the jail, but the one previous to that, which is the fight in the bathroom stalls, was just awesome as well. Even though one's like in a contained area and the other one's like in this huge courtyard. Yeah. And it's just the areas in which they fight in just continue to like expand. And considering how many fights in action scenes are in this movie, it never felt redundant to me. It felt like every single fight was fresh and new, which is amazing considering how many fights are in this movie. But I don't know, Brian. I'll let you take over real quick here and see what anything you had to say about it.
Well, the first thing I'll bring up is this is the first movie in a long time where I actually cheered for a character, and I wasn't the only one. People were actually clapping and cheering almost after every major action scene that happened, especially toward the end. And I won't even talk about those scenes because, my God, it is awesome. And you really want the character to do well against those odds that he's faced with. It's pretty amazing, especially for a movie that there's really no English in it whatsoever. Mm-hmm. It's pretty amazing to me that people would be so invested in those characters. I think the story, even though it's better, it's kind of been there, done that before a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't really take away from any of the experiences that you see in the movie. It just keeps ramping up and going and going and going until you really, you feel a lot of adrenaline coming out of that theater. That's kind of what I felt coming out. It's just like, not that you want to beat the shit out of somebody or anything, because there's no way to do the same thing, but you definitely feel like your heart rate has increased after you finish seeing this movie. And I don't know any movie that's ever done that to me before. I think The Raid was kind of similar to that, but I saw The Raid in the theater, And it was the same way, but Raid 2 is just so much more. I mean, amazing.
That car chase.
Oh, sorry, James.
That car chase is amazing.
Yeah.
It's like what I found, like they threw in a character that up to that point was kind of nothing, and they made him amazing. They made him badass.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. That movie just constantly surprises throughout.
Yeah. The only way I would think people wouldn't like this movie is if they don't like subtitle movies, but you're an idiot. I'm sorry I'm saying that to you, and we might lose you as a listener, but you're an idiot if you think subtitles are a major issue. You should just watch it. I mean, it's really a work of art in a way of action movies. Other ways, if you're really squeamish towards violence and a lot of blood, you probably want to get away from it. You don't want to see this movie. It's probably the only way I can say it's okay for you not to see this movie if you're squeamish about those things or don't like seeing those things. Because you definitely see it in these two movies, Raid and Raid 2. But if you're an action fan, if you've seen every single American action movie, you're missing out on something that's truly great. Because the characters, the action, the storyline, and I would also say the filming of the movie, not just the fight scenes, but just the communication you have between the characters. It's shot in a certain way that makes it kind of beautiful. They take some weird shots, like of a blade of grass, or what was the other one that had like a coin that was being flipped. I don't know. It just kind of added to the whole dimension of the movie, even though it's so simple and there's really no reason for it to be there. It kind of adds some impact to it. If that makes any sense.
There's a scene that happens halfway through the film in an alleyway that's like filled with snow. It's like a snowy scene. I thought that scene, there was like a ton of action right before that.
Yeah. And
when that scene happened where all of a sudden you're in this alleyway full of snow, it's like all of a sudden all that violence and everything, it just kind of transcended that. And it was like you said, it was actually kind of beautiful in a way. The way it was shot, the way it looked. And the music, yeah. I don't want to oversell it, but at least at that point in the movie, it felt like I was watching like some sort of opera. Yeah. It was all the elements came together at that one moment, and I was just in awe.
Now, of course, snow doesn't really make sense.
Watching.
Yeah, snow doesn't really make sense in the movie though, but it was good for that scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe it was just something that was in his mind or something that it was snowing, and that's what was happening. But
no, I failed to mention that I saw this movie about 2 weeks ago, and it had a Q&A with the director, and somebody actually asked him about the snow scene, and he said that it makes no sense because it never snows in Indonesia.
Yeah.
But he said that the visual style of it, he said he didn't care, he just wanted it to look that way.
Yeah.
Which I'm in the same boat. I'm like, I don't care either because it looked amazing. So.
Right.
But
amazing movie.
Yeah, I don't know what else to say about it.
The only thing that's really bad about it, it's very hard to see. It was only in 2 theaters in my area, and we live in LA for God's sakes. So it was at Regal, and it was at ArcLight Hollywood. Nowhere else could I find it.
Well, the first film had a limited release also, and kind of expanded out to some other theaters after a while. So I'm hoping that next week it might go out to a couple other theaters that maybe help it reach out to other people.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you have the means to see this movie, see it immediately. And you definitely want to see it with a crowd. I mean, Brian said he had an awesome crowd. I know my crowd I saw it with was on the next level. It was amazing, the people I saw that movie with. And yeah, it just helps you really get that much more into the movie. Not that you need it, but it's just that much better. So I got to ask you, did you take your wife with you, Brian?
Yeah, she saw part 1 with me 2 days before, 2 days before we saw part 2. And I was kind of using part 1 as a test to see if she could handle this type of movie. She immediately asked me, "Is this really gory and stuff?" And I was like, "Kind of, but not," because, and it's actually true. I mean, you do see blood and everything, but at the same time, they're really quick snapaways or takeaways. It's more of like in your mind of what's happening to these people that makes you go, ooh. Like you'll see something, but it'll be really quick, and you won't linger too much. Not all the time, but the majority of the time.
Yeah.
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 But she loved it. She was a little. She said agreed with me that the story was a little weak on part 1, but she loved part 2. She was like, wow. Like I was thumbs upping her the whole damn movie. I was like, wow, this is. And I literally went to her ear and whispered, "This is epic," because once you get to about halfway through the movie, because by the way, this movie is 2.5 hours long.
Yeah.
And what was funny was at our theater, ArcLight Hollywood, they have a thing where the ushers come to the front and kind of tell you the movie name, and then they also tell you how long the movie runs. When people heard 2.5 hours, people were like, "Oh!" And you know what the usher said? "Don't worry, it's awesome."
What?
The movie. It's an awesome 2.5 hours, is what he said, and people kind of laughed and cheered at that. Yeah.
Yeah, when I saw it, I didn't know what the runtime was yet. I didn't know how long it was, and there were numerous times where I actually thought the movie was going to stop.
Yeah.
And they were going to end it for whatever part 3 comes out, but it just kept going, and it
doesn't really feel.
The movie's extremely long, but
it doesn't feel like 2.5 hours, and there's no time where you'll look at your watch saying, "Damn, what time is it?" Like another movie we're about to talk about.
whoa, preview.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, I think that's about it for the Raid 2. I don't know what else we could say about that. Yeah, go see it when you can, if you can. If you haven't seen the first one yet, watch that one immediately so you can go out and see this one and enjoy it with a crowd.